welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name is Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, this is a live show where I'm actually sitting down and doing an interview. Today, I am sitting with someone who, if you all remember a few months ago, got invited onto his podcast called Authentically Kinky. Today, I am sitting down with the host. Goes by the handle HiThereCatSuit, otherwise known as John, who's been in the lifestyle probably I think between the two of us, we probably got near 50, 60 years in the lifestyle. John's got a lot more time in it than me, but we had such a great conversation the last time I was on his show. I told him I wanted to bring him on mine and kind of start expanding a little bit more on some of the other issues we talked about there. So without further ado, John, thank you for, hounding me, sticking with me, and playing a lot of the email tag we've been playing for a few months to get this to come to fruition today.
That's called being a podcaster. You always have to stay on top of folks going, are we doing this podcast or what?
I know. And it's funny because there was somebody else I interviewed. She's out of Wisconsin. I don't know if you've ever spoken to her yet. She goes by Red Leather. I had her on a few months ago. And she's been in the scene like as you and I have for decades. Mm-hmm. And I joke with her. I said, if I had coordinated this better, I would have brought her on too, so we could have a three-way bash session between the older guard and whatever's going on in kink today.
If I start getting out my cane and talking like this, we're in trouble.
I know. Back in my day, right?
We walked up the same hill both ways and in snowshoes, and we liked it.
Exactly. We drank from a water hose, and that's where we got it from.
Yep.
You and I, when we had talked on your show on Authentically Kinky, we started touching base a little bit there about what we're starting to see as the new evolution of kink. And I'm not talking about the trends, the aesthetic, but what has actually changed in expectations and how people are showing up and even some of the behaviors. And I mean, you get around, like you go to a lot of events. What do you think this is starting? What are you starting to see?
I think you nailed it with the word expectations. If you have expectations going to a kink conference or a kink party or even a kink date, if you have expectations going to anything, you've already written the story in your mind with an ending and an epilogue before it even happens. You've determined that you're going to go in and you're going to get your butt beat and you're going to feel absolutely amazing and all the cares of the week are going to go away and you've needed this vacation for the longest time and it's just so incredible what you're going to actually get in the party and what do you mean she was in a car accident?
Exactly. Fantasy versus reality. But what do you think now is the driver?
It's literally thinking that it's going to happen and convincing yourself that it's happening before you even step into the place. So what I do is I replace it with anticipations. Anticipations are stories that haven't been written yet.
Mm-hmm.
All the possibilities exist. So now I would go to that same party going, I believe I'm going to be meeting up with a good friend. We're going to have a scene. And hopefully it will be good for both of us, but as opposed to...
I would still counter on that, though. With anticipation, we still then leave a lot of room for disappointment.
Yes, but if you have convinced yourself that it's going to happen exactly how you're anticipating it, my favorite anticipation is not knowing what's going to happen. I am a bad negotiator in the details because I like to be surprised and I like to go into the moment not knowing a lot.
Right.
But I also handle my negotiations in a different way where I will present my limits to someone, present my likes and loves to someone and say, I trust you for coming up with the format that brings you joy. What are the things you like to do or haven't tried? And one of the things that was on one of my likes, limits, and loves spreadsheets, because it's actually a spreadsheet, was body shaving and head shaving. And somebody said, you'd let me shave your head? And I went, Sure, I'm going to ask that you put a guard on it, though. I don't want it
Right.
all the way down to the skin, but absolutely you can. And they were like, I can't believe somebody's going to let me do that. And I said, happy to. And so when you have that anticipation, when you have the joy that can happen, when it happens, it's usually better than you imagined it. But if there is disappointment, you can deal with it a lot better because you haven't determined what's going to happen in your head, where anything less than what that is a
Yeah, but
disappointment.
I would argue now that we're seeing a lot more disappointment
Oh
in the
God,
scene
yes.
because I think we're building so much of that fantasy in our mind, so it's never going to meet the expectation threshold at all.
Ec-
It doesn't even matter if the scene goes well,
mhm.
even if everything's negotiated, because it doesn't match what we're dreaming. Why do you think that, or even with what you've observed now around the country? I mean, I've seen this definitely in different countries, but I'm specifically more talking about the U.S. Do you think we're seeing a lot more or a lot less effort being applied to the lifestyle and more just carry me through it? I call it the baby bird syndrome, kind of regurgitate everything for me so I can just learn it.
I think there's a huge divide with people who've been in the scene for a while and people who are newer to it. I think there is a societal divide between older people and younger people.
Sure,
It's not the get off my lawn routine, but rather it's a we know what's going on and we don't need you to tell us what's going on. And by the way, you have to live up to our rules. It's not our job to live up to your advice.
sure.
And it goes one way. And that's what disturbs me. But I'm also able to talk through it. Instead of just saying no, I say, let me understand what you're saying. Talk to me about
I
why
do.
you feel the way you feel, because there today, and we talked about it before we started taping, it's a black and white world.
Sure.
People are either yes or no. You're either left or you're right. If you're moderate, you're strange.
Well,
And
sure, because of the world right now, we've moved the pendulum, and it doesn't really. I don't care where most people sit. There's a big attitude, for the most part. I think a lot of people carry where it's us versus them, or you're with me, or you're just against me, or the enemy. We create when we do that. What we're creating is groupthink, and it does. And I've
mhm,
seen it applied to BDSM. And when you do groupthink, what you're really doing is destroying individuality and creativity. For me as a sadist, there's not a chance I could do that because that would mean I could only follow what everybody agrees to that's sadistic enough or not too sadistic. I couldn't be creating ideas with copper tubes and setting somebody on fire because that's outside of the group thinking. But
I believe it comes down, Chris, to competition.
of
And
what?
I'm talking about society. People have to be right.
Yeah, but
It
BDSM,
is
I look
my,
at BDSM, I'm going to make a comparison, and I don't like this sport at all, but I'm going to make a comparison to BDSM, right? Because I think this sport is stupid, but it's kind of got one valid point.
yes,
BDSM is similar to golf. You're only competing against yourself.
very true.
And BDSM is the same way. We tell people there are some standards, right? We all agree that there's consent. We all agree we should negotiate. We should be respectful, truthful, and transparent. Those are these little bit of pillars. And I've stood on those for 27 years. You stood on them for more than 3 decades. And so has pretty much anybody else who has more than 5 minutes of actual understanding here. But the rest of it, then we start, we start daddy doms or needles or the rope community that, I just can't stand. But they're all here, no matter which way you go. And from there, you start building how you want to live your life. So my question is then from there, you're only competing about what you want to do. No one rope tie is better. No one more needle play is going to be that much more,
Hmm.
more brilliant, right? No more canings or brutality or soft play is going to mean anything deeper except to the people that are involved with it.
What you're looking for is the same thing I'm looking for, except you're looking for it in a different way. What if you didn't keep score?
Well, when I say keep score, I'm talking about just as far as
No.
when I say you're competing against yourself, you're only really building what BDSM then means off of those primary sets.
Mm-hmm.
What BDSM will mean for you and your dynamic. I don't keep
But
score with anybody.
so many people that I've seen have to do more, be more popular, uh,
Sure.
and
The risks
I.
become the risks become higher. There was a duo a very long time ago on Fat. I cannot recall their names. They were either husband and wife or boyfriend girlfriend. They were in some
Mhm,
sort of relationship. They switched with each other. They were very much into the waterboarding scene, very
mhm,
heavily. And there had been, I remember years and years ago, I had commented, and I'm like, there's a reason we don't even, in military interrogations, they don't use it anymore. Well, long story short, they had an incident and he ended up, I believe, suffered either a concussion or he suffered a
mm.
traumatic brain injury. But because the push was to keep doing more and more. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was for their dynamic, but it was definitely for the display of everybody else. And then that was it. They kind of disappeared from the scene.
Mhm.
I don't know what happened to them. I don't recall their names. This was, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, at
I
least.
remember vaguely what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I have an interesting perspective to all this because I have never had a dynamic. I've had good friends, I've had some play partners, but I've
sure.
never had a dynamic that went any further than one session because either they decided they didn't want to do it or they forgot to tell their husband or all sorts of reasons that basically left me as collateral damage.
Are you talking
And
about you bottom out of choice or you're a sub that's still searching?
I'm not a sub.
Okay.
I am a damsel. I want to be
A dance.
captured. I want to be captured and I don't need to be rescued.
Okay.
I want to turn my trust over to
Well,
you.
this yeah, but isn't
And
that more about being prey then?
I don't think of it in that way, but it can be, especially if you're doing like superheroine role play. Absolutely. It's,
Sure. I
coming
just
up with a trap.
whenever I think of damsel, I always think of somebody in distress. The damsel in
Yes.
distress needs to be rescued.
But the
Right.
beautiful thing about my version of damsel is I don't need to be rescued.
But see,
You
there's
can
that
you
goes
can
back to
take
my
me from.
point.
Go
That goes
ahead.
back to the point that I made before. It doesn't matter how we're classifying it or what I believe it is. It's what makes it for you.
And that's the point I was about to make was I have gotten a chance to play with some amazing doms all around the world. To be flogged by Goddess Phoenix, to have Jean Bardot decide to step on me on a red carpet, to have Amanda Wildfire and Queen P do amazing things for me. And there will be people coming to play parties going, "You've done all these amazing things. You've been suspended upside down. You visited Irene Boss in her dungeon. There's no way I could play with you." And I said, "Why?" "Well, we could never live up to them." I said, "Who's asking you to?" My connection with you is my connection with you.
Right.
The way you flog, I'm not comparing to anyone else. I want to build that connection with you because of how you do your things.
Right.
And people are always amazed because they think I'm going to be disappointed if they are not a perfect Florentine flogger or something like that.
But
I
see
mean,
what you're talking about here is the experience versus identity. You want the experience, they're worried about the identity
very true, but
because it's a
God,
comparison.
God, do I want a journey that somebody will take me on?
So
That
what do you
is
think so what's been the barrier for that? Finding one person to do that with.
polyamory has been a lot of it because a lot of the people who I've met already have been partnered and something
Sure.
happens in their partnership where things go wrong. I can be a little bit needy. I will totally admit that. But my neediness comes off as I want to help you in whatever way I can.
Yeah, that's people pleasing.
Yeah. and I've been a people pleaser all my life, and
Yeah, we won't
it,
turn this into a therapy
yeah,
session like I
it,
did with
it, it,
like I did with
it,
Baku.
yeah, but
Right.
it nearly killed me. I
Sure. I mean,
mean,
if you can recognize the behavior, that's part of catching the loop
right.
real time. But the thing is, I mean, I I don't know. I think for everybody inside of BDSM, the journey is going to always be different. For me, being a sadist in my group and my order and what we do, it's me and one other. I
Mhm.
have occasional play partners, but it's so out of the norm for me because I don't know how they breathe, how they react, what their tension levels are, how much pain I can inflict. I don't know. And I don't want to spend time getting to know outside of the person I've already spent
Mhm.
10 years doing it with.
I understand that very well. I always honor the relationships that people are in and will never do anything to try to break something like that up.
No, no, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying you would.
No,
I'm
no,
just saying like
but
I get that because it's I see a lot of DOMs out there who are talented and I think and I don't I tend not to bash DOMs because I just don't because I think they get a lot of bad rap and then we
good,
overlook people on
good,
the
because they'll come and bash you.
I
Anyway,
know
go
they
ahead.
will. Oh, well, they could try. I mean, they could try in their own right. But I mean, there's a lot of because I think a lot of the dumb bashing that I do see is goes back to this whole part about, you know, what we know when you and I came into the scene. Because I remember on your
Mhm.
show, you and I had talked about the old newspapers back in the day. And for those who don't know what a newspaper is, these were things made out of paper that had words on them and little
Mhm.
advertisements. Because back in the day, that was the only way you got actual information out to people. We didn't
I
have
have
social media.
I have copies of DDI in my bookshelf, which
But
was quite literally the only way you could find a reputable dom, even though they were also on Craigslist. But
yeah,
that's
but
how
see, I
you
didn't.
found a
But
reputable
see,
dom.
I'm still talking before social media
Oh
because
yeah.
back in the
No, no,
day,
no.
like it was, you had to be vetted, and you only
Hmm.
got vetted if you were in a group or you belonged to a dungeon and enough people witnessed what you were doing and had some private interactions that could reinforce that.
Yeah.
And then you could go and say, hey, I've now been in the scene a few years. I've got some experience. I'm
Hmm.
looking to grow and I'd like to develop somebody. Does anybody know of anybody who might be looking? And then that's where it's kind of like a kinky dating match would begin.
You know, it's a lot like the business of pro wrestling back in the 70s.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
not supposed to know what it is. And then when you do know what it is, they're going to totally stretch you and vet you and make sure that you're absolutely the kind of person they want. But they're not going to tell you about it
No, no.
until you're one of them. And then they'll let you in on the
Sure.
kayfabe.
Absolutely. I didn't go to my first private party event, even after I went through my year of training
Hmm.
because they didn't want me there. Not because they hated me. It's just I was still going through their process of who is Chris
Yep.
and my dominant persona back then. And even though I was going to the dungeon they owned and I trained under the people who owned it, and I went to parties and I went to trainings, I was all in for those 5 years. It wasn't until year 6 I got invited. And then I
Wow.
understood.
That's patience.
I loved it though. When we talked about this on your show,
Yeah.
when I fell in love though, I wanted to know more. And it's something when I'm working with people or I'll just talk to people casually. I said, are you reading at the very least, or doing maybe some virtual events, every few months? And it's the same thing. It's more of a passing fancy. But I see a lot now compared to where you and I came from. And I don't want to make this like an old guard versus a new thing,
Because
but I
I'm not
do.
really old guard because,
No, but
uh,
it's not. We just have rules that we all believed in and
right.
that kept us safe and kept us from hurting each other or harming each other.
Yeah. Negotiations weren't anything that we did. We tried to have good understandings.
Absolutely. But now I see a lot of this. Well, I talked about this a couple of years ago, well, probably longer than that, but I called it the fast food mentality. I want BDSM hot, I want it fresh, and I want it now. And I'm not expected to do anything. It's supposed to be served to me that way. But yeah, but it doesn't work that way. You have
And
to
many other
cultivate this.
people want a kinky vending machine
I
where they're
agree with that as well.
that.
Absolutely. And I see a lot of the not any dominance, I don't know whether mistress, master,
Mhm.
whatever. let's talk about that there. And I see that argument quite often. And I agree. They're not, this isn't, you know, kink on, you know, it's not, you're right, kink on demand. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work. If I don't have a dynamic with somebody, I'm not even interested. Like, I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll come and tell me you're a masochist. That's great. I don't know what your pain threshold is. Something I don't think we discussed it. I don't know if I told you privately, but the latest thing we were doing was we're using copper coils, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrap them around somebody's neck. Then we extend them far out. I'm not going to tell people how far because it's part of the science. We had to learn. We had to become scientists to figure this out. But
Mm-hmm.
you heat the copper tube. The copper, when it gets hot, goes white.
Mm.
So when it hits your neck and it spins around you, it's beautiful and white. But it doesn't burn you because by the time and it reaches that distance, it's still hot and still stings, but it just glows without burning.
Mm.
Now, that sounds terrible. Why would you do that to somebody? Because it's fun and you're a sadist and you want to think of new stuff to do. But you have to figure that you can't do that with new people that you don't know. And it's not because me being older or having as much time in as I do. It's because I've put in all this time and I realize that with somebody. I know that they're not going to panic. If I tell them we're going to do this, they trust that we're not going to harm them.
We could almost do an hour on what I'm about to bring up.
Okay. We could do an hour on almost any of these conversations.
Being single in the kink scene.
Ah, yes.
When you
The
are
pariah.
a man, F you, you don't belong here.
That's
However,
interesting.
however,
That's interesting. I never
however,
considered it from the other side.
however, a respectful person can ask respectfully, and that's what they're looking for. The FU is the kink fetish dispenser or the vending machine. People
Sure.
who just want, when you think about what you want exclusively, instead of thinking about what they want and what can be done together. That's
Sure.
the key. But when you are single, you have to ask every single time. You have to ask about the possibility. Would you even talk to me about playing? Would you even talk to me about negotiating? How many
Sure.
times do I have to meet you and have a conversation before you feel comfortable enough to play with me? Then you have the female side of it. And it's dangerous to be on the female side of it because a guy will pretty much take anything that moves if he is so inclined, and most of the time straight line thinking about woman must have sex with, boom. When we know that BDSM is so much more than sex.
Absolutely. Well, they're not even synonymous. And that's a
Right.
hill I don't even have to die on. It's still a concept that I see time and time again come up, and people will say, well, they go together. No, if you negotiate them, yes.
Yes.
But just because we do erotic things or overtly sexual things, that doesn't mean we're going to have sex.
But
We're not going to.
if you think about the single part of it,
Mm.
if a person has to ask, like if I have to ask, and I ask twice, I'm pushy. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's eggshells to even think about talking to somebody. I have the bravery to do it,
So
but
where did
I
the
also
conversation?
know.
But then that's an important point because we're
Yes.
talking now what you're bringing up. That's a complete breakdown in civility of conversation.
That's right. And here's the reason why. Where is it? Thank God I've lost it. Because we're so addicted to these. And all we do is text words to each other, which is
I
not a
agree.
conversation.
No, it's pictographs. I'm not back in. I recently talked about this. Actually, one time I actually spoke to men and I said, stop sending emojis. This is not hieroglyphics. It's redundancy and laziness.
The one time I send emojis is if it's a simple me saying, I'm thinking of you, you don't have to respond, but I will send 3 emojis to people. They're usually happy cat, Purple Heart, and then one that I've that either they pick for themselves, and it's my simple way of saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. Just wanted you to know." You don't have to respond. But this is my point that I'm trying to make, Chris. Look at your iPhone these days. It will put up a response for you for a text. Go to any email thing. It will write the email for you. Chat
Oh,
GPT.
sure. Grok,
Where
Gemini.
are we going to
I haven't gotten to that
remember how to talk to each other?
I haven't gotten to that conversation yet, but there is an article I'm working on now. I won't go into too much detail, but I am talking about the difference on the romantic side, where what's going to happen. We already see it. There's already platforms that are AI romantic linked LLMs. That's actually what we're talking about. That's not, we don't have AI. We have a language learning model, right? We have AGI, average general or artificial general intelligence. That's coming. I'm figuring between 5 and 10 years. I'll have the first model up, and that will be competing with our own brain. Right now, we have a language learning model. It just gives you, if you prompt it for something, it'll prompt you back. I'm sad, and it'll start writing all the prompts to why or whatever. But we are learning,
Chris,
we are losing the art of conversation. We don't have this because we don't need to think about it. But you and I grew up in a different time.
Yes.
We read and wrote, and we could sign our names, and people don't even know what cursive is anymore.
Very true.
Speaking of foreign language.
And we would have conversations on the phone that would last hours.
Yes, because especially if you had a daughter, you would tell her to get off the phone because she'd been on the phone for 4 hours tying up the phone line.
And what they were doing was the most beautiful thing in the world.
I know, Wes. We were connecting. If you're old enough, remember as a kid, we had 2 cans and a string.
Yep.
I did that with my neighbor because they had a kid, and that's how we talked. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, vibration travels down the string, and you can actually hear each other. That's what eventually led to telephones. But anyways.
Let's circle this back to BDSM.
Sure. Because what you're really talking about is social media as the primary driver now.
Right. And if you're going just off of a picture, swipe left, swipe right, and there's not even any words involved. Oh my gosh. It's what you're swiping for a look. You don't give a damn what they think.
Oh, sure. That I agree with. I mean, and I see the comments all the time. Social media, I think, it hasn't made the world more connected. I argued this decades ago. It hasn't connected us more. It's separated us apart. Yeah.
It ripped us apart.
We don't really talk. That's great. I can talk to someone in I'm not knocking my Polish listeners. I'm just using it as an example. Right? But it's great that I can talk to one of you in Poland or Bulgaria or Russia. I think I've been talking to somebody in Russia recently, or in California. It really doesn't matter. The reality is it's not in person. We're not spending any time looking at their eyes or hearing them laugh or telling their stories. We're not seeing how they react. We're just reading it through some emojis and texts, and then that's it. We see everything is carefully curated. Every picture, I mean, it doesn't matter. Open up fetish.com, open up Pornhub, open up Fetlife. For the most part, pictures and videos that's fine. They want to carefully curate them. But that's not you. And it's funny. I've had conversations with prominent 100 plus 100, 200, 300,000 follower people on there. And they are the complete opposite of what they project. Introverts, shy. But that's the complete opposite of what they're putting forth. And it would be interesting. But why? Why have you become so introverted and feel that your exterior, what's it really doing? Do I think that social media has caused more harm to BDSM? Yeah, I do. Because it's moved us to where we are going. Now, first, I have nothing against the swinger community and nothing against the poly community and nothing against the BDSM community, obviously. But these are 3 different lifestyles, and we have mashed them together. More so, I would think a place like Fetlife mashed them together.
Very much so.
That's a financial move. That's fine. I don't run his or own his website. He can do whatever he wants. I just play by the rules. but I think a lot of us don't seem to understand this because we're seeing in dungeons around the world, it's not just the States, but I could target South Carolina, Atlanta, Tennessee, Maryland. It's now becoming, they have spaces for sex, and then the main dungeon part. We're mixing too many things. It's not because I'm against anybody, and I'm not against sex. Everybody loves sex. That's fine. That's not what I'm debating. But I'm not there for the sex. I'm there to see the scene. I'm there to watch somebody get beat, or maybe on occasion get suspended and set on fire. Yes, that was fun to watch that because it's interesting as a sadist to watch all these things. Or to somebody that's young and enthusiastic and is, creating. They've used a PVC pipe in a way that I've never thought you could use it before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's interesting, but we are stifling a lot of the new creativity. We're recycling a lot, but we're injecting. I mean, God, Melbourne, Australia, same thing. They're injecting so much sex into the scene. And then you have the people who are genuinely curious. I'm not attacking sex. I want to be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who are genuinely curious and starting to set foot into the scene see this, and then they back out because that's not what they're there for, and they think that's all BDSM is. It's not. I mean, I even got asked about PPE the other day, and people aren't even clear on what total power exchange is.
Mm-hmm.
So I articulated the best way that it works for me, not for everybody, just for me.
I think that our ability to communicate, our ability to share with each other needs and wants, rather than talking with instead of talking at, seeing instead of looking,
absolutely,
listening instead of hearing.
100%.
Those are all deep things that are being lost right now.
Well, let's talk about this. Before the show, you and I were talking. We were talking about personal stances, wherever you are, and a divide between the spectrum, maybe even in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's interesting, you and I remember a time where it didn't matter if your neighbor was one way, they voted, and we voted the other. We would still sit down and have a drink with them or have a cup of coffee and, oh, hey, you like that person? Yeah, I don't like this. Cool. And then we just moved on and we had our coffee and cake. And Sara Lee, for some of you who know what that is.
Because nobody doesn't like Sara Lee.
Nobody doesn't like Sara Lee pound cake. My God, I miss that stuff. But you could do that and move on. But now, if you start looking at the community, it's you just can't. And if you do it, right? It doesn't matter where, like you and I, if we differ on certain things. If you love rope, you love rope. That's fine. I'm not here to tell you. I just don't like it. Never liked it.
People are unkind.
But we've moved into hostility is acceptable as a society on a lot of topics.
Exactly. I work in a call center.
Okay.
I hear people angry all day. And the first thing I do is I greet them with a cheerful voice. Happy Sunday to you. Hope you're having a great day. And they'll come in hot and they're like, I can't be nasty to this guy.
Right.
And then they start being nasty. I went, I'm more than happy to do that for you. And it's not that I'm being fake. It's that I want to meet you in a place where we can connect and talk. And I can help you with what you're angry about, because chances are what you're angry about is something that you're scared you don't have control over. Whether it's the amount of money you have, whether it's the fact you're spending too much and you know that you're spending too much for this particular item and you can't stop yourself from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get pissed at you when in fact they resent themselves. And you learn a lot about people in environments like that. You learn a lot about people in environments that are politically challenged these days. I grew up in a Democratic family that became, now we're talking so Democratic that the president of the United States, who was Democratic, was at my parents' wedding. That's how Democratic we were.
Right.
And then my parents became Reagan Republicans because that's what they started to believe in.
Right.
And as my dad was getting towards his end years, he was watching Fox News as his source of news. And back then it was almost news.
Sure.
And now you have, I will watch MS Now before I'll ever watch Fox News because that's kind of the way I lean. But both of them are just saying what the other one doesn't want to hear.
Well, I
And
think we need to step back even from that though. They're
yeah.
corporations. So then
Yes.
what was reporting, what was the news supposed to be? Objective truth. So we could
Yeah.
make a decision on information. It's not about, and Denzel Washington, he said this a few times, and I like quoting him. It's no longer about reporting the truth, it's just reporting to be the one reporting first.
Right.
Whether it's right or whether it's wrong. I'm paraphrasing what he said because I can't remember exactly. But he said, then you go back if you made a mistake and then you retract. That's not the way it used to work.
So
And
let's again bring this back to BDSM.
sure,
It's about perspective.
it can be.
How you see what someone else does defines who they are for you, even if they aren't really that person. Let me explain.
Well, no, absolutely. The first thing I can even objectively think about is race play.
Yep.
Now, I have a friend of mine in the Netherlands who I talk to on occasion. He's a bull. And he's like, I won't get involved. And he's black. He's like, I won't get involved with anybody unless it is race play. I love it. And he says he found it funny because it's mainly Americans trying to dictate to everybody else in BDSM what they can and can't do. And I said, I know, I agree. I said, that's the hubris of the American society. Not all, but very many. And I said, then my question, I expanded on race play. I haven't done a show on it yet. I've got one slated. I'm going to do it. Open it up if anybody wants to talk to me about it. But I even said, well, what happens if you have a mistress, for example, or whatever, a dominatrix that happens to be from, I don't know, Bombay, who will only dominate a submissive man from Venezuela because that's all she wants. But he must be Venezuelan. Well, technically, we're talking about two different races. So why are they allowed to do it and nobody else is? So what it comes down to is we're worried about the aesthetic part of two cultures. But who are you to dictate what others can do? We used to respect your kink is not my kink. Now it doesn't matter. Your kink is just wrong, and I'm telling you it's wrong. But these are also the same people I suspect not really doing BDSM. I don't know. I don't associate with them because they wouldn't, in my circles and probably yours, they probably wouldn't last 5 minutes. Not because it's an insult, because we just do diametrically different things.
That's a really heavy, really heavy subject that I know very little about.
Well, it was just one, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
You could pick needles. You could pick.
But
I
what
could
I'm
pick rope.
what I'm talking about perspective is one person decides one person isn't a person they want to be around.
Sure.
So they decide they're going to make it their job to make sure that everyone else hates that person too.
Yeah, but that's been around since the time of human beings.
It's called bullying is what it's called.
I would agree to a level.
If you're doing it with malice and the ability to just tell lies all the time.
Sure, and I agree with that. And the problem is that at a certain point, if the behavior, I've always noticed when the behavior continues, I'll listen to a story. A story is like anything else. I can care less if it's from CNN or the mistress that owns the dungeon down the road. Don't really care. But if what I'm looking at is how the story keeps getting portrayed. Now, do I hear the same story from multiple people? Yes or no? Can I confirm it? I can either confirm it or I can't. That's where I start. Now, if I can confirm it, great. Now, has the situation been rectified? Yes, cool. Now, here we are 6 months later, and we're still hearing the same story. Now I start to question, is the story still true? Critical thinking. But that's been removed for a long time for many people because we don't move past the the force behind the anger or the force behind the hurt because it gives us something to drive towards as a behavior,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we are trying to run from our problems inside of our own lives. Then we don't have to confront those problems because we can attach to whatever.
Let me ask you this, Chris.
Sure.
If you say something in a public forum
Mm-hmm.
or privately, and those people tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on,
That's the telephone game.
something that isn't quite accurate or exaggerated or rumor,
Sure.
and suddenly everybody's like, oh yeah, I heard this about this person,
The
but it
Mandela
always
effect.
starts exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have a bunch of people who are going, no, it's not this way, and we're more than happy to be with this person. This person is a lovely person, and it just gets the matter and has them start telling even more
Well,
stories.
sure, because they're no longer focused on figuring out whether the
It's
initial rumor.
competition. It is competition.
I would argue it's not about competition. What I would argue it's confirmation bias. They're
Mm.
competing against what I already know to be true, and that will
But what if
disrupt
it
how I
isn't
feel.
true?
It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
You're
This is
disrupting.
the
You're
one thing I still
disrupting. You're
have a
just
little anger about, quite honestly. And
no.
I don't get
I
angry
get
about a
that.
lot of things.
I get that, and I can't tell you. So I mean, I run into this when I'm working with people. That the reality is that we'll smash. We'll talk about something, and I'm like, okay, so what you're talking about actually is point A. They're like, no, it's point C. Yeah, but everything is pointing to point A. They don't want to acknowledge. It's non-acknowledgement because it disrupts their entire system of
Yeah.
beliefs, and they don't understand. And people generally, when you do that, don't have a functionary problem afterwards emotionally. If that's not true, who am I without that? It's really funny because I'm working on a paper right now to tell me who you are without a label. Who would you be, John, without if I was to ask you to describe yourself to me without one label? Not general non-conforming, not I wear latex suit, none of it. Can you do it? The premise sounds easy. But in the current generation, they struggle. And the data is there. Because we live by labels now. Every article I read, I'm a neurospicy, ADHD, trauma, something. Those are labels. Who are we without them?
I'm thinking about that challenge
Which one?
and about describing myself without a label.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can think of is caring.
That's a start. It's
The
interesting
reason is
now.
it can be taken many ways, but it's universal in the thought. I care about others. I care about things. I care about
So what I've just heard
concepts,
is kind, compassionate, considerate.
but I'm not using those words because those could be considered a label.
They're not a label.
Well, I'll take
A
kind,
label would
considerate.
be
Yeah,
a label would directly be something like, yeah, I have PTSD.
right.
So that's all I ever say when I enter a conversation. That is
Yeah,
how I'm labeling myself. Right.
and
Right.
that's part of the argument about my gender fluidity.
Sure.
People will question my gender fluidity because I've never said I'm anything other than a man. But what they don't realize is that ever since I was a kid, my thought process, and therapists have gone into this, they say, John, you're androgynous in the way you think.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just came across an article, somebody's profile the other day. I mean, just comment. I don't know why they stood out. Took a
Mm-hmm.
look, and they're transitioning from one gender to the next, but they like to play in their previous gender.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of their structure. My question when I look at all this is, who is anybody to dictate what? You can't, because we had this show before we started recording today, or just this discussion, and I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
my brain just melted down because somebody's telling you, one group is telling you that's not what it is.
Yep.
Well, isn't it what it's supposed to be for you? Isn't that the rules of today?
My first real foray into gender fluidity was a therapist named Andy.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy called themselves gender fluid, and I didn't understand what that meant.
Right.
And they told me I have 2 underwear drawers and I can't figure out which one to wear. It depends on who I am that day, thus
Mm-hmm.
the fluidity. I actually somewhat have that same situation.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I'm sure many people listening to this today will say, my God, I'm in the same boat.
so if I have to be businesslike and feel dominant and feel as though I am having to be, lack of a better term, straight on and no nonsense,
Right.
I'll put on a pair of boxers. But 95% of the time now, I'm putting on women's panties and tights because that is
Makes you feel
what
good.
allows me to not have stress about who I am.
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
Makes me feel safe for me. But what does that bring out of me? It brings out gentleness. It brings out kindness. It brings out this selfless
Okay,
behavior
gentleness and kindness, but those are descriptors that you're using towards somebody else. What does
right.
it do for you? Well, I don't want to get too deep into
No,
I don't want to turn
no,
this into
no,
therapy,
and
but
no. I'm.
the real question, if I was going to
What does
stop
it
you and
do for
ask you,
me?
what's it do actually for you? Because if you slip into that role, that's great that you're kind, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's not, and I like that you're compassionate. I like that. Those are great
Mm-hmm.
qualities, but those are endearing qualities you would express towards others. What's it do for you? How does it make you feel? My God, we're getting into we're gonna get into some therapy
It
adjacent stuff, but that's all right.
it. I want to be the example,
But you can only be an
and
example for yourself.
but this is what I want to be an example of: that you can be kind and still win, that you can be selfless and still want things, that you can be gentle with people and still be tough around others,
Sure.
that you can present a person who is without malice. I talk. One of the biggest arguments I ever got in is I said I'm very envious of this couple who tie together and make out while they tie. And I had some people attack me. Well, you just want it for yourself. I go, hell no. I want them to have it. I would like something like it. And there's
Sure.
no good English word
Well,
for
so
it. And I
but
call
that's
it envy without malice.
no, that's well, you don't even need to add the malice. You can just envy.
Hmm.
It's a
But
very
there's such an
articulate. That's a
it's like
very
calling somebody nice, Chris.
I
How
understand that, but
is
see
nice a
that goes
compliment these days?
well, yeah, but see, this goes back to what we were talking about before, where we're
Yeah.
talking about such hostility. You have to also put the premise in there that people have chosen to be hostile because for them, hostility is their joy. And what do I
But that
mean by that?
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, they don't even understand. Moments of levity bring them pain. It
right.
doesn't bring them happiness. It brings them more pain. So they don't even find it. They want to, for very simplistic terms out of psychology, they enjoy yucking everybody's yum.
And it brings me back to my original premise, competition. You have to be right. You have to win.
Yeah, but it's not so much about competition in that sense. Some people are just unhappy. And that's as old as time.
But
If I'm
they're
unhappy,
only
I'm going
happy
to
when you're unhappy.
no, they're unhappy inside of themselves, and the only
Hmm.
way to release some of that is
Okay.
by making others around them unhappy.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if you're off getting a tie in the corner with Mistress X and I'm over here beating slave A, why does it matter what you're doing and what I'm doing? I don't care what you're doing. Not because I
Nope.
don't care about you as a person. I like you, John.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be focused on slave A and seeing how many cane beatings before I get them to crack.
Yeah.
I'm not focused on what you're doing. Don't care. That's
But
it.
if
But we've
you're
lost that.
if
We've
you're
lost it
person
as a community.
yeah, but if you're person 5, you're not involved in either one of those scenes.
No, but they will place themselves in the scenes. They will then go and write off on social media or make a post or have some post-scene discussion on why they don't like why caning should be illegal and why you were being hung the wrong way and you shouldn't have spoken to Mr. Sex that way. And they
So
will do this as a judgment, as a passing judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that still stems from typically their unhappiness. Why? I don't know. I don't speak to everybody on the planet, but I do hear these conversations quite often in almost every community around the world. I've seen it in the UK, Belgium, the States, Canada, Australia, NZ, hell, the Middle East. I hear from people there. And I'm really, really curious. I really love learning about what they're doing there. But they said even those same little dynamics show up.
So allow me to read to your audience what I read to you before.
Yeah, please.
And especially when you talk about person number 5 is going to go judge what they're seeing.
Sure.
So I've had people say that I cry to coerce people into playing with me. And this thing haunted me.
Statement. It's an interesting statement.
This thing haunted me for a long time. Because
sure, crying's an emotional release. We've
exactly.
talked about this, but I'm only saying this again because I want to preface this where we see double standards, and it's important for me to say this now because it's the reality of what was said before, but won't be, it's got to be said now. Crying is an emotional release, and that's not owned by any gender.
So this is what I wrote. I cried today at work. I wasn't proud, but I was proud of being able to tell others about a remarkable teacher that made a difference for me. Crying can be for joy. Crying can be for pain. Crying can be for mourning. Crying does not make you weak. Crying is authentic. Crying is being vulnerable. Crying comes with no expectations. Crying does not mean you have to do anything for me. Crying belongs to me, not you. You can't claim my tears as an excuse for how you feel. Only I can claim my tears. They are mine. I've earned them. I've worked hard for them. And I am the only one that is experiencing them. Do not ever make my tears an excuse for your weakness. I own my tears, and I'm selfish about them. And to me, and I bear a lot of feelings about this. I have always been emotional. My dad was emotional. My mom was emotional. We lived in an emotional family.
Right.
We shared crying with each other as honesty. If we cried, there was a reason.
Sure.
Nobody ever told me to stop crying. And so I never did. And I think of the Jimmy Valvano speech that he gave at the ESPYs about that you should cry every day because that means you're alive. So to take that act by someone and claim that it's a weapon.
That's an interesting concept.
And that is why after the 2 years I've been dealing with the situation in Cincinnati that's how I call it. I finally came up with the words that explain how I feel. Because
but for you should not be enough.
That is enough. I'm finally good with it. I mean, I don't have to doubt how I felt all those times. Yes, I would feel bad at times. Yes, I would ask somebody, hey, it would really help me if you did this. And it was up to them to say yes or no. It wasn't me going, you have to do this.
Sure.
but that's what the story ended up being, because they were trying to paint it in a way that eventually they said my classes were to groom people to feel sorry for me so they'd play with me.
But now we're getting down to perception.
Yep.
And then it goes back to what I was mentioning
Yep.
before, where sometimes people are just unhappy. And so they make statements because they are unhappy. And then the whole point is just to spread that, because
I
it's
haven't
easier
talked
to.
about this in a while, so
No, it's
if
okay.
I
I
get a little
understand.
pumped up, it's
No, I understand. I mean, it kind of speaks to something bigger that I actually want to kind of go into something next. Where are
Mhm.
we at in the community as far as what's worth preserving besides instead of destroying?
Mhm.
What are we actually starting to lose here as a community? And I'm talking hardcore people who actually follow BDSM. I'm not even talking about the people who mix that up and do, kink and sex. That's fine. I'm talking about BDSM and what we're actually losing. I can think of in the last few years some really good. Well, I followed them because they were a sadist and a masochist, but they've left the scene. They're back to doing stuff privately or at
Mhm.
invite only parties. Because whatever we're in now, it's evolved. Whether it's for the
Mhm.
good or the bad is the bigger question. I don't know. I don't
What
know what.
we are in now is a cliquish world where people want to make their rules and apply them to everyone else.
Of course. I mean,
And
that's always been that way, though. I see this with anybody who writes anything on
so,
social media or has big platforms, because it's about getting people to agree with you so you can do something. What I've always never failed to understand is I don't get. That's fine followings. I don't even know where I'm at. I don't keep track.
mhm,
I haven't thanked anybody, I think, since I crossed it, because that's great, but you're not here for me. You're here for the work. And I want people to be here for
right.
the work, because
So,
I've always made this about the work. But I've never understood turning people against others. And I've
mhm,
seen big writers in places like fetish.com or on X or on Instagram or even on Fetlife turn them against other people just because there's a disagreement.
yeah,
And they frame, but that comes back to the victim mentality. But
no.
at the end of the day, how is any of this serving the community?
So I promised you that I was going to save a poem that isn't by me. It's by a therapist or a life coach named Mickey Scott Bay Jones.
Yep.
And this was read before a kink gathering by a wonderful woman who is she has really fun ways to bring people together in the kink community.
Right.
And she read this, and instantly I went, oh my God, it defines the issue that we have in kink. And I think it is the number one issue we have right now. And that is the definition of safe. What
Well, that's
truly is
interesting.
safe?
All right, let's hear it, because I already have
Invitation,
a response to it.
invitation to a brave space. Together, we will create a brave space because there's no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Have you ever heard of a man named Jeff Cooper?
I have not.
So he was a pistol aficionado.
Mm.
Pistol shooting
Mhm.
was his jam. And I came across his quote. It has to do with pistol safety and shooting. It had nothing to do with the scene. but it's
Right.
probably one of the most brilliant quotes I've ever heard about safety. And he said, safety is something that happens between your ears and not something that happens in your hands or you hold in your hands. Now, he was talking about at the time, you can have all the personal protection equipment, the gear, every protocol, and all this stuff by itself isn't sufficient on its own to prevent some sort of accident. And I sat with that after I read that. And I mean, I sat with that for a couple of weeks because I
Mhm.
said, this is literally, you replace a couple of words, you're talking about BDSM. What you're talking about. And it's the same thing this poem goes to. It's a
Ri-
concept we get locked onto because we believe, and you hear it all the time, that person's safe. Well, how do you know? I just talked about this last week on my show, a collective bias by the
Mhm.
community. You're just confirming it. You have no actual knowledge, right? You've heard Mistress Sex is great, and everybody tells you she's great, and the dungeon master says she's great, but you have no interaction. But through societal impression, you think she's great. But you've never had a one-on-one to determine that. But you've already confirmed it until it's, before you have had an interaction. We do this a lot.
Mhm. Which is why I will always determine what I think of someone after I actually have an interaction with them.
Sure. Absolutely. And
For instance, I had heard that this one dom who I had been, quote, warned about,
right.
they were coming into a big party full of many doms, and I did not know her by face. I was just checking people in, and I said, "Ma'am, may I have your name?" And she looked at me and she goes, "If you don't know who the fuck I am, you don't even belong here," and stormed off.
Mm,
Now, that warning that had come to me, I actually see what it's about.
right.
Now, a few weeks ago, I went to a party in a dungeon, and somebody had said, the person who runs this dungeon is very cunning, and they are charming, but they'll manipulate the hell out of people. I went, all right. Walked into the dungeon. Person introduced themselves. I said, nice to meet you. Charming as all get out. And to me, she didn't do anything that came off to me as manipulative. I have friends who are in the Dom world that live in the same city and they don't like each other at all, yet I'm really good friends with both of them
Right.
because I'm Jimmy fucking Carter. I am one that can stand between two people who hate each other and have a conversation with both of them at the same time. Because to me, it's important that we go from our own experiences and our own personality, because what we can miss if we dismiss ourselves from everything that people have told us about somebody, we might miss out on the greatest person we've ever met just because we were scared or didn't feel safe around them.
Well, sure, there's a lot of opportunities. I don't
Yeah.
really, I'm kind of at the, well, I mean, I'm older now, I'm 52. So, I mean, I'm at a point in my life, I don't really care. I'll write something and people are like, you can't say that. Well, yes, I can. And you can't tell me
Yeah.
what I can't say. If I'll only retract something if I've made a factual inaccuracy. I don't bend the knee. That's one thing about me. Like I never do. But I will listen. You don't like me, you want to talk? Let's talk. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
why. I'm willing to have that conversation. I'll tell people right now I'm a moderate. Do I lean a little right? Yeah, because I'm still a capitalist. I got to work in that society and I work to make money so I can buy stuff so I can
Mm-hmm.
live. That makes me a capitalist. And I invest my own capital and to make, like you did, to make your brilliant, production studio behind and you got your boards behind you and your your podcast on there. They cost you money. That's time. It's capital.
Actually, I'll give it up to Clips for Sale. They bought this for me, but
Oh, okay.
but
Well,
but the
that
fact
was their
is,
capital. Then they invested in you.
and they did it because they believed in what I do, because I shared the stories of people that are only seen as objects, and I created a human perspective of them. And almost every single person that comes on the podcast, that's what they talk about. You talk to the human, you didn't talk to the character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my show is about more than anything, is why you are who you are, what makes you up inside.
Sure.
And I actually asked a content creator and Dom from England the other day. Her name was Laura Sky, and she'll be on the show coming up. And I said, Laura, how much of Laura Sky is in you? And how much of you is in Laura Sky? And she hesitated. And she looked and she went, I don't know if there's any of me left. And I gasped, because we think of the human and we think of the character like most Doms that I know are the kindest people in the world. Do they do really mean things? Yes.
Sure.
But they're doing it for the reason because they think that it can bring you to a place that you want to be. So their cruelty is their kindness, which is one of the things I teach about in my class. People see me in a vanilla place or in my place of work. They don't realize that I spend pretty much all of my time outside of work putting together this podcast or trying to make connections within the kink and fetish community and bringing people together. There was a wonderful content creator in England who had this great idea of creating a music video of people who are gagged singing a song that she wrote. And she said,
Right.
I want to do it because people are silencing us. So I want to sing a song where we all sing with gags on, to bring people to the awareness of, we love what we do, but you're trying to silence us, in talking about the credit card companies, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to call it. And I went, oh my God, that's inspired.
Right.
So what was the first thing that I did? Because it's me and I want to connect people. I went, who are some of the people that I see that are gagged, that are the just absolutely enjoy that feeling? And I tagged them all on social media so they could come together for this project. Do I have anything to do with that project? No. Is it going to do anything for me? No. But it does something for the community. It gives it a voice.
It can.
And so that's my want in life. That's my desire for my life, is to leave this community a better place than I found it. But the only way I want to leave this community is when they put me in a box, because I want to explore this and I want to understand what so many other people have had the opportunity to experience and I dream about. And I'm not dreaming about the porn version of it. I'm dreaming about the person, the portion of it where a Dom looks down at me and says, I'm glad you're down there. Now I can build you up. Or reaches their hand down and says, you know, you've worked really hard and I'm proud of you. That's why I do this. That's why I get preachy about it.
Well, I would argue though, so it's the same way I guess we could use preachy, but I don't even like that word. I think we're passionate.
Absolutely. We
So
care.
I'll choose.
We
I'll switch
care.
your P. We care. I'm
Yep.
just switching the P word around. I'm passionate about BDSM. Why do I abide by rules? Because I'm passionate about it. 27 years, I've never harmed anyone. I've hurt them. My God, have I hurt people? God, yeah, because they asked for it and I delivered. Like it was a Tuesday night barbecue, right? I
Yep.
enjoy it. And see, you giggle. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
You find that
I
connection.
just love the term.
Yeah.
It just
I
felt like
just,
a Tuesday
it's
barbecue.
just Tuesday night barbecue for me, right? Get a bunch of sadists around and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I got beat with a broom handle. Awesome. That's like a Tuesday night barbecue for us. We don't even care, right? But we're passionate. We love it. And I want to keep seeing the community thrive. I do when I'm long and gone or I've retired or whatever I'm going to do in the next 20, 30 years. When I get too old to keep lifting something because my arms hurt, I hope it continues in whatever form it's going to continue. I don't want to see it. The whole point of what I loved about kink the most and what I love about BDSM and the power exchange, it strips away everything I knew that I had already had to conform to in my outside life. And now we're bringing conformity to it to shape it into something, at least in my opinion and what I see, and to shape it into somebody else's vision. And that for me that'll never happen.
Do you remember Steve Martin's nonconformist oath?
No.
I'll help you. Please repeat after me, okay?
Okay.
I promise to be different.
I promise to be different.
I promise to be unique.
Promise to be unique.
I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it.
T-shirt. Yeah.
That
exactly.
is it.
Got it. He's very well. Very
Chris,
good catch.
let me just, I know we've been talking for more than an hour and I love talking to you, but I want to just kind of put a bow on community and my love for it and what I want to do. My class, Being Authentically Kinky, which used to be called Kindness and Other Kinks, has one mission and one mission only.
Right.
And that is, if you ever felt guilty or had shame thrown upon you for being kinky, I want to help you realize that you don't have to live that way. That is the entire reason for the class. I want you to come in with all the doubts. I want you to come in with any nasty thing somebody said to you, that you're a pervert, you're strange, you're weird, you're anything.
Aren't those badges of honors for us?
They can be, but they can also be hurtful. So what I want people to understand is the only normal in the world that means anything is the normal that starts with the letters MY. My normal. My normal belongs to
that's
me.
absolutely. I think that's one thing. It doesn't matter what setting is.
My
Define.
normal.
How about do this? Define normal. Simplify it.
My normal is defined by my life experience. No one else has lived my normal. No one else can judge my normal because they have not had the experience of my normal. You have your normal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't judge your normal because I haven't lived the experience in life that you have had. If you try to force your normal onto my normal, you are trying to change for you, not for the other person. The only way you can be authentically yourself is to live your normal and be fine with it.
I would even say to add that the moment you change for anyone else, you've lost your originality.
Right on the nose, as they say in Hollywood land.
Yeah. Well,
we have another hour to talk, don't we?
We do. As a matter of fact, what I was thinking of is I'm going to try to coordinate a time because I believe she's central. I'm going to bring Red Leather on and I think we're going to sit down and do another kind of another round
I
table.
would love that.
Thank you for coming. Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.